Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. Trying something a little different today with my hardware here. As you know, in the last video, struggled with dropped frames again. It's been a while since we've had such a severe problem. Everything goes great for about 10 to 15 minutes, and then everything goes nuts. So I really like this new laptop, and I'm giving it another chance. I'm using a different piece of hardware for the video channel. I've lowered the audio rate to see if that helps at all. I want to give this laptop every chance possible. I've invested a few $100s of Kuhn funds into bringing it up to par, so I would like for it to work. Fear not, though. If it can't be a production machine, it will assist in post-production as audio. As an audio station, workstation, I think it'll work fine. I think the video just puts more demands on, you have to spend a lot of money on a laptop to get an equivalency to the performance or the abilities of a desktop, just processor wise. But I/O, input output, USB ports, and so forth, also because of the form factor of a laptop, they're just not so robust. And I think ultimately the only answer is going to be to get a desktop, and it's not going to be a cheap one. I can build it myself, which will save some money, but still, I mean, I got to have thousands in the fund in order to just start that process. Haven't gotten to that point yet. Hopefully we will. We keep growing as this channel keeps growing. This Sangha keeps growing. Every little bit of donations toward the Kuhn Fund goes toward buying hardware and services that can help our endeavor here to create the best resource possible to practice Shakyamuni's teachings, ultimate teachings of the Lotus Sutra, Nichiren's doctrines and elucidations on that, and propagating it better and more throughout the world. Yeah? I mean, that's our practice. That's what we're trying to do. So thank you for your part in that. Thank you for liking, subscribing, especially because not for me, but for our propagation, this is the way we have to work with YouTube, which is our provider after all, and their algorithms to say, hey, look at me, people are interested, so let more people know. So that's how that works, right? And then if you have the financial capability to help support this channel and the various things that we're trying to do to create a very rock solid and robust resource for our practice, by all means go to Patreon or PayPal directly, paypal.me/Sifu actually, I should probably change that to paypal.me/TLK, because it's really for that. It's not for me. But anyway, humans, we make mistakes, yeah. So you understand what we're trying to do. Let's get into it. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. We are now in the Lankavatara. We are in chapter 1, reading Mr. Suzuki's translation, albeit biased as it is, as somehow he maintains the rhetoric of religion and all of that, which is, as I've said so many times, and I will repeat in case this is your first time here, Buddhism ain't no religion. It's anything but. Religion is all about attachments. It's all about the body, the ego. Everything's about the body and ego in religion, and everything is a reference to that body and ego. I mean, it just is. And Buddhism is everything not that. So it's not a religion. That's as simply as I can put it. So after the question has been posed at the end of the previous video, and I'll read just the end of that paragraph in case you had a hard time with the last video because of audio glitches and so forth. I still put it up because the integrity of it is pretty good, although the video and audio go out of sync about 15 minutes into it. And I apologize for that. Hopefully that won't happen this time. I'm going to keep an eye. Oh, that reminds me. I need to put the stats up here so that I can keep an eye on what the heck is going on with the frame count. And so far, we've lost absolutely no frames. So I'm going to keep an eye on that. And when it starts climbing, I'm going to stop and restart so we don't have... All right, I hope I don't have to do that, but this video will come to you as all one piece. Don't worry. This is production angst, yeah? All right. So we ended with a question, I believe, by... was this Ravana or was this Mahamati? In either case, the question was about how can there be a duality of things to abandon, a duality that arises from falling into discrimination, from discriminating self-substance where there is none, from the idea of things created and uncreated. In other words, if we know all of this, that we intellectualize, in other words, the philosophies, Sharvajas, Pratyeka Buddhas, and so forth, all intellectualize that things are empty. Remember that slippery word. And that the true nature of things is a moment-to-moment instantiation, that there is no real past, present, and future. There is only the constant process of happening, instantiating potential in each moment, right? Then Mahamati or Ravasha asks, then this being the case, as it should be, how could there be any abandonment of dharmas or adharmas? I'm not sure what adharmas are yet, but we're going to get into it. So he's asking the Buddha, so if that's the fact, then why do we have to try? Seems like a silly question, but all right, let's take it at its merits. And in the Lankavatara, Shakyamuni endeavors to answer. Said the emancipated one, Lord of Lanka, seest thou not that the differentiation of things, such as is perceived in jars and other breakable objects, whose nature it is to perish in time, takes place in a realm of discrimination cherished by the ignorant? Okay. So there's a whole lot of assumed knowledge in that statement, right? Because in the statement that things, you know, when you jar pickles or when you try to preserve any perishable item, vegetables in this case, in a jar, pickle them, salt them, whatever, you know, to preserve them. They didn't have Amana refrigerators back then. And the jars that you put them in, after all, are breakable, whether they're clay jars or later glass, so on and so forth. Then all of this is in abeyance to the idea that of past, present, and future, that actually exists. That when I put the jars, the pickles in the jar, and I seal the top of the jar, that in 5 years when I open it, I will still be able to eat what's in the jar. That whole idea pervades all of samsaric understanding, right? And you may be saying, well, yeah, that's a fact. And Buddhism doesn't deny that, by the way. Buddhism simply says that the condition of the jar and the condition of what's in the jar and keeping the oxygen away from the item and sealing it is a moment-to-moment instantiation of tendencies and conditions. That the tendencies and conditions of that jar and what is in that jar is a moment-to-moment process of instantiation. It's not a permanent thing. It does not exist in and of itself. And so you're thinking, well, yeah, it does. I put it on the shelf, it stays on the shelf. And so Buddhism says, yes, but if you were to examine more closely, you would see that the pickles are fermenting in that jar, aren't they? They're creating oxygen, which is why you work so hard to seal it. They're creating gases. They're changing in composition, moment to moment, as a result of being jarred. They don't stop being what they are. They are constantly in change, as is the liquid in the jar, as is even the clay or the glass. By the way, did you know, and this is a fact, that glass, what we see as transparent solid, is actually a liquid. And for proof of that, and they've done a lot of chemical changes to glass over the years to slow that liquid down. But if you look at 100-year-old houses or even older, go to these old churches that have been around for hundreds of years and look closely at the glass. First of all, it won't be as idyllically flat and transparent because it's pouring. And the bottom is thicker than the top because over time the glass has it is very, very slowly pouring. It is a liquid. It is not an absolute solid. But that's how we experience it moment to moment, isn't it? Even as it's poured, we look at it and we go, well, no, dun, 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 it's solid. And that's because of phase that, perhaps if it was cold enough on average, and we may get there with climate change, that liquid will flow slower and slower until it would cease flowing. Just like everything in the universe, it has tendencies and conditions. Bingo. So Buddhism doesn't alter reality. It doesn't alter what we know. It doesn't get rid of it either. What it does is examine it for the process that it actually is. Well, I mean, without resorting to the fact of what he's saying here is the clay pot, the glass jar, whatever, it's breakable. So at any moment, it could end, whatever that precious encapsulation you think you've made permanent is. The vapor, the lock of the ceiling could end, break, and then everything rots. The pot could crack, so on and so forth. Nothing is permanent. The point is, everything is constantly in change. Of course it's constantly in change because everything is a moment-to-moment repeated instantiation of tendencies and conditions. It may appear permanent, but it is not. I've often used the analogy of when we, I think it's in geometry, when we learn geometry in school. Some of you may remember, if it's even taught anymore, I don't know. But the definition, and you can do this whether you remember geometry or not, you can look up on Google, what is the definition of a line? right? You think a line, you draw a line with a pencil, there's a line. Zzz. It could be straight or it could be curved, whatever, but it's a line. You make a line with a pencil, right? But the definition of a line is a loci or loci of points. Now, I use this analogy because it's so very Buddhist. A line is a locus of points, one after the other. A life, time, is points of time, birth, death, birth, death, birth, death, birth, death, one discrete point followed immediately by another discrete point, and we perceive that progression of points as linear, as a line. But here's where your mind gets blown. You go, okay, I can get that. If you look closely at the paper of where I drew a pencil line, you can see how it breaks apart into little dots. But dots are not points. Dots are actually, as you keep magnifying, quite elaborate collections of graphite and creases of paper. Keep going. Because a point, and look up this on Google as well. What's the definition of a point? Ultimately, a point is a location. It's not a thing. It's a label for a location. It's nothing. It's a location. A location where? In time-space. It's just a location. So it's a reference point. And another followed by another reference points indicates a direction in space-time. We convert that into a line. That's the would you call that a problem of precision? It is the depth of our sensitivity to the process. And I say all of this because I am identifying through secular means, through mathematics, through words, through the tools that we modern people have for understanding our environments. I am expressing exactly the insight in mind of Buddha versus samsara. Buddha sees all in that granular reality, which can only happen seeing that in the mind because our earthly senses, our eyes, our ears, our sense, our touch, all of that, are simply do not have, and maybe for good reason, that depth of sensitivity distinguishing what's actually the process of life. And the good reason would be simply to keep us anchored in samsara, in thingness. It is what has driven us to emerge this mind, this witness to the process. All well and good, but while we're here living this life, we're being tossed about by our clinging to these definitions of reality, of thingness, of time-space. So great. You're a human being. You experience stuff. Things happen all the time. You remember things. You look forward to things. You want more of things. You don't want to lose certain things. Okay, that's human life. No one's arguing. Shakyamuni or Siddhartha didn't have a problem with that, except Siddhartha noticed that all that activity does have a downside. Because there's a constant stress, anxiousness, and it really comes out when we're challenged in our perception of samsara with sickness, or somebody stole my whatever. I can't get that back. I'm not getting enough. I'm so lacking in my emotional satiation. I don't have enough lovers, a lover. I don't love myself. We're constantly stressed about being in samsara. And Siddhartha thought, there must be a way for us, there must be a universal way for us to live this amazing life with all the stuff without feeling. If we solve one anxiety, it's immediately replaced or announces a myriad others. We're constantly in this state. It furrows our brow. It makes our spine get curved. It may, age. And then we die, and that's all so much suffering. And it takes so long to die. Why does it take so long? It's all the suffering, the decrepitude, all the foibles, the very things we enjoy about life that we hold, create all of our suffering in every form. Pain, mental pain, physical pain, on and on and on. There's got to be a way to live this life with less of that and more of just the joy, the amazement, the wonder of all of it. That's Buddhism. That's not religion, you see. It's a way of experiencing this life, all of it, without the attendant stresses and anxieties of what? Really craving it, owning it. Somehow this idea that we own our, well, first of all, self. Because everything, ownership itself, is based on self. How can there be ownership without an owner? So first thing to do is to define the owner, which is what we do in our childhood, right? We spend a lot of time identifying me. And then as we mature, which takes forever, years, we start to demand me. Oh, puberty, right? And then you could argue whether there are 60-year-old babies or very mature teenagers, whatever, the whole spectrum, right? And so in this one sentence, Shakyamuni is talking about this assumed knowledge base that we all know. And this is what the question is about. If I'm mature and I know that everything's happening moment to moment, then why do I need to work so hard to achieve liberation from it? Well, just because you know it intellectually doesn't mean you're experiencing it. And that's the crux of Buddhism. How do we experience all of this amazing life without succumbing to ownership? And it all revolves around this sense of I, mine, ego, self. Yeah? So let's continue. How are we doing? Oh, I've lost a lot of frames already. Gosh, that's annoying. Should I stop? I think I'm going to. And restarting. And where'd my stats go? Come on. Reset. Okay, hope this works. My goodness. All right. So one sentence and we had to stop and start again. Oh my. This being so, is it not to be so understood? In other words, everything we just talked about. It is due to discrimination, cherished by the ignorant, that there exists the differentiation of dharma and adharma. Noble wisdom, arya jnana, however, is not to be realized by seeing things this way. Lord of Lanka, let it be so with the ignorant who follow the particularized aspect of existence that there are such objects as jars, etc., but it is not so with the wise. One flame of uniform nature rises up depending on houses, mansions, parks, and terraces, and burns them down, while a difference in the flames is seen according to the power of each burning material, which varies in length, magnitude, etc. This being so, why is it not to be so understood? The duality of dharma and adharma thus comes into existence. Not only is there seen a fire flame spreading out in one continuity and yet showing a variety of flames, but from one seed, Lord of Lanka, are produced also in one continuity stems, shoots, knots, leaves, petals, flowers, fruits, branches, all individualized. As it is with every external object from which grows a variety of objects, so also with internal objects. From ignorance there develop the skandhas, dhatus, ayatanas, with all kinds of objects accompanying, which grow out in this triple world where we have, as we see, happiness, form, speech, and behavior, each differentiating infinitely. Yeah, which is why I took a break to explain that after the first sentence, because word salad, yeah? The oneness of the Vijnana is grasped variously according to the evolution of an objective world. Thus, there are seen things inferior, superior, and middling, things defiled and free from defilement, things good and bad. Not only, Lord of Lanka, is there such a difference of conditions in things generally, there is also seen a variety of realizations attained innerly by each practicant, yogin is the word he's using, as he treads the path of discipline which constitutes his practice. How much more difference in dharma and adharma do we not see in a world of particulars which is evolved by discrimination? Indeed, we do. So he's still defining the differentiations that our consciousnesses make as we crave to hang on to ideas, things, classifications, data, rather than the moment-to-moment experience of being in the process. We're like quantum computing classifiers and data collection machines. And our mind is completely distracted by that process. This is what Buddhism says. And so by that distraction, that is the root source of our anxieties and our stress. Am I collecting enough data? No matter, and as he's saying, that data we then splice or dissect into different versions of that data, because they're not only pants, they're blue jeans, or they're slacks, or they're red, or they're blue, or they're black, or they're gray, or they're a thread count of this or that, or they're of this size, that size, length. We're endlessly dissecting. And this is what Buddhism would say in the mind is a dis-ease. The true meaning of the word dis-ease. It destroys the facility of ease, of being with, flowing with energy. We're so consumed by definitions that we never take time to participate, enjoy, just be with. So this is what he's dissecting. How are we doing? Okay, holding firm. Lord of Lanka. The differentiation of Dharma and Adharma, and I'm going to look again because I know we talked about it, but is there a glossary in this book? I want to know. Oh, really? He just has footnotes in the back. Oh, that's disappointing. I want to know what Mr. Suzuki is defining as Adharma. Oh my goodness. Magical phrases. All right, let's continue. Lord of Lanka, the differentiation of Dharma and Adharma comes from the discrimination. Lord of Lanka, what are dharmas? That is, they are discriminated by the discriminations cherished by the philosophers, Shravakas, and Pratyeka Buddhas, and ignorant people. That's a pretty harsh slam. He's basically saying people who have dedicated their lives to study of Buddhism, the Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas. And he includes the philosophers, because as I reminded you earlier, it's because philosophers are based on the human ego. And ignorant people. So people who don't even know anything about Buddhism. He lumps them all together. Ouch. They think that the dharmas headed by quality and substance are produced by causes. These are the notions to be abandoned. In other words, the thoughts, an ego self sees the teachings, as you and I are doing it right now, teaching ourselves that the teaching is of something outside being. This reminds me of something I've said to people who are very hung up about having a degree. I have these excellent textbooks that I'm going to an excellent school, and these textbooks are current. They're not like the old textbooks that school uses, and therefore these books are better. And I learn from these books, and because it says this in the book, then I know that I have this knowledge, and that this knowledge is the most current. And then I remind those people, do you not understand that somebody had to figure out this stuff on their own, in their own mind, before ever a book was conceived? That a book is just a record of many years of previous cerebrations, thoughts, ideas, and then they're abstracted through the mechanism of language to communicate those thoughts and insights to you. By the time you read them, these things have existed in the mind for who knows how long, and further, that by the time you read them, they've already gone. They're changed. They're revolved. There are new things replacing them. And unless your endeavor in study and reading these books is to discover for yourself the evolution of those thoughts in your own experience, then you really haven't learned anything. Because until you actualize something you learn for yourself, that is the only place where learning happens. Let me give you a concrete example. You can read a book on building a house, a stick frame house. Just a basic, let's make it a shed. Let's keep it simple. Build a shed. I submit to you that no matter how many times you read that book on building a shed, no matter how many dreams you have about actually building a shed, no matter how evolved you think your understanding of that book on building a shed, until you buy nails, a hammer, lumber, and you set about, and a saw, and so forth, building that shed, you will have no idea what it is like to build a shed. It is your experience of building the shed from which you will truly learn how to build the shed. And this is an important thing to consider, and this is what he's talking about, is these Shravakas, Pratyeka Buddhas, philosophers, even ignorant people, they see learning and enlightenment, or whatever it is they're pursuing, as bound up in the study and the words. The study and the words has no value if you don't put it to your own experience. Do you see? This is where he slams the sects of Hinayana, the early practitioners, and even here in the Lankavatara, points to people who continue to learn but don't actualize what they think they know. And he uses that verbiage throughout several sutras, doesn't he? These are the people who think they have achieved what they have not achieved. Because they know it intellectually does not mean they know it experientially. And Buddhahood, Buddha-ness, is not in a book. It's something to be manifested specifically. The capacity for it already exists. It's already there. But if your mind is completely distracted by collections of data, it never takes a moment to be in, to realize its very essence. This is the core of Buddhism, yeah? Such are not to be regarded as real because they are appearances, right? Imaginings. It comes from one's clinging to appearances that the manifestations of his own mind are regarded as reality, dharmata. Such things as jars, etc., are products of discrimination conceived by the ignorant. They exist not in any real way. They exist in a samsaric way. They have utility. But in the fact that there are constant manifestations of tendencies and conditions, they never stop. There's never a moment that you can say, that has been here and will be here. No, because that, as soon as you identify it, is not that anymore. It's now a new instantiation of thatness, suchness. This is where the word suchness starts to make its debut, yeah? When you realize that things are just exhibiting tendencies and conditions moment to moment, they have a suchness of chair, a suchness of jar, a suchness of me, you. Yeah? Their substances are not attainable. The viewing of things from this viewpoint is known as their abandonment. Well, you're not abandoning the jar. You're abandoning the idea, the experience of a, what's the word I always use? A static thing. It's a suchness of thing. It's a mental adjustment, and it may not come easily at first, but it will. What then are adharmas? Yes, thank you. Define that. Lord of Langa, dharmas are unattainable as to their selfhood. They are not appearances born of discrimination. They are above causality. There is in them no such dualistic happening as is seen as reality and non-reality. It's not that they are and they aren't. It's just that they're a process of suchness that's constantly evolving. The idea of their having selfhood, in other words, is there, in our modern parlance, are there atoms of jar? No, there are certainly, the jar is made of atoms and molecules, but those are in constant flux. That is the point. Once again, we achieve that insight in Buddhism of a very, very powerful microscope that sees the true nature of everything. That these states and amalgams of energies are constantly moving, constantly forming. Just like the stem cells in your body that can be anything cellular, that then are programmed by our body's biological information to become liver cells, stomach cells, heart cells, brain cells, blood cells. They all start as a basic unit. But please, don't stop there, because that basic unit also is made of smaller parts. And again, the dissection of Buddhism goes to the very core, energy. And if you perceive and live in a world with the mind that understands that everything is suchness, you finally can release your cravings for permanence in everything, and therefore live an idyllic life, a released life, an emancipated life. Right? Not getting rid of anything, just losing the cravings for everything, which would you could argue would make you more involved with samsara, because you wouldn't be distracted by all these false illusions of ownership and loss. This is known as the abandoning of dharmas. What, again, is meant by the unattainability of dharmas? That is, it is like horns of a hare, or an ass, or a camel, or a horse, or a child conceived by a barren woman. They are dharmas, the nature of which is unattainable. They are not to be thought as real because they are appearances. You see what he's talking about? Our mental facilities, samsaric mental facilities, are kind of dulled so that we just have this categorizing of appearances as though those appearances are self-maintaining, real, permanent. But they're still there. All of those appearances are still there. The chair is still there. The jar is still there. But our perception of what they are is profoundly changed. And therefore that changes our experience of them, enlightens us. Still good. They are only talked about in popular parlance if they have any sense at all. They are not to be adhered to as in the case of jars, etc. As these unrealities are to be abandoned as not comprehensible by the mind, the vijnana, those consciousnesses are 8 earthly samsaric consciousnesses of manifestation themselves, so are things bhava, of discrimination, also to be abandoned, because the bhava are a result of the discriminations, obviously. This is called the abandoning of dharmas and adharmas. Lord of Lanka, your question as to the way of abandoning dharmas and adharmas is hereby answered. Because the question was really asked from the station of a Sarvatra Pratyeka Buddha philosopher, an ego-based question. If I know all of this, then why do I need to release myself from it? If I already know it intellectually. Because your intellectualness, Lord of Lanka, is built into your 10 heads. You're still basing what you know on your ability to know it. Do you see the problem? You're still identifying. You just shifted your focus. Lord of Lanka, thou sayest, I hate this old English, again, that thou hast asked this question of the Tathagatas of the past, who were arhats and fully enlightened ones, and that it was solved by them. Okay? Lord of Lanka, that which is spoken of as the past belongs to discrimination. As the past is thus a discriminated idea, even so are the ideas of the future and the present. Because of reality, dharmata, the Tathagatas do not discriminate. They go beyond discrimination and futile reasoning. They do not follow the individualization aspect of forms, rupa, except when reality is disclosed for the edification of the unknowing and for the sake of their happiness. It is by transcendental wisdom, prajna, that the Tathagata performs deeds transcending forms, animata sakara. Therefore, what continues the Tathagatas in essence as well as in body is wisdom, jnana, not the vijnana. Now, he's in the language he's kind of defining the ninth consciousness. But they don't have that yet. So they're trying to shoehorn this into the eighth, which is the problem evident in the Lankavatara. It's just not there yet, right? They do not discriminate, nor are they discriminated. Again, this is a state of mind. This isn't a personage. A personage is the emancipated one. A personage is the Tathagata, the Tathagata. Tathagata is the process of which we become aware. When we chant Namo Myoho Renge Kyo, for instance, we are invoking, we are enlightening our Tathagata-ness. Wherefore do they not discriminate the manas? Because discrimination is of the self, of soul, of personality. Identification is the problem. This is where all these concepts of self or soul or personality come from. There is no soul. There is no self. There is only a selfness, a suchness of Sylvain, of Juliet, of whatever. It's a suchness. It's a moment to moment, constantly in flux manifestation of tendencies and conditions, which are affected by further work on those energies, modifying, adding to, evolving tendencies and conditions. It's a momentum of energy that we are experiencing. You can put a label to it, but understand it's a label, it's not an identifier, which sounds like a contradiction, but I think you know what I mean. How do they not discriminate? The Manovijnana is meant for the objective world where causality prevails as regards forms, appearances, conditions, and figures. Therefore, discrimination and non-discrimination must be transcended. This is what I've been saying all along, right? That the manovijnana, the repository, this mind, is responsible, this earth with these 8 consciousnesses, is meant for the objective world. It's designed to conceive of and observe this samsaric, physical, objective world. But objective is an interesting word for him to use, because he's speaking from Buddha-ness. An objective thing is something to be witnessed, but it is immediately transgressed as a subjective world, isn't it? It's meant for the objective world where causality prevails as regards forms, appearances, conditions, and figures, but seeing them as moment to moment. Subjective to the objective. And I'm not sure he worded that right, but you understand now? Lord of Lanka. We're almost done with this chapter, so let's see if we're starting to lose it again. All right, I'm going to do it again. This is really frustrating. We'll see if this works. I'm trying my best to use this equipment, but we may just... we'll see. I'll see how this looks in post, and I don't want to have to keep doing this to make videos, so we may have to go back to our earlier computer. Apologize for the interruptions. I want to make this as graceful as possible. Therefore, discriminations and non-discriminations must be transcended, because that is subjective, right? Lord of Lanka, beings are appearances. They are like figures painted on the wall. They have no sensibility or consciousnesses. Interesting. Basically, what he's saying there is that the consciousnesses are, again, a moment-to-moment witnessing, an activity observer, but it too has no permanence. It's constantly evolving. We know this already, right? Nobody does anything in life without constantly observing what they're doing and evolving. Well, I'm not going to do it that way. I'm going to do it this way because this works better for me. That very mental activity is what he's talking about. Lord of Lanka, all that is in the world is devoid of work, interesting word to use, and action, because all things have no reality. The reality is a construction. And there is nothing heard, nothing hearing. Lord of Lanka, all that is in the world is like an image magically transformed. I don't like the magic part. This is not comprehended by the philosophers and the ignorant. Lord of Lanka, he who thus sees things is the one who sees truthfully. Those who see things otherwise walk in discriminations. As they depend on discrimination, they cling to dualism. It is like seeing one's own image reflected in a mirror, or one's own shadow in the water, or in the moonlight, or seeing one's shadow in the house, or hearing an echo in the valley. People grasping their own shadows of discrimination, upholding the discrimination of the dharmas and adharmas, and failing to carry out the abandonment of the dualism, they go on discriminating and never attain tranquility. By tranquility is meant oneness, and oneness gives birth to the highest samadhi, which is gained by entering into the womb of Tathagatahood, which is the realm of noble wisdom realized in one's inmost self. The first chapter called Ravana asking for instruction. And then we go to chapter 2. So, again, barring the difficulties of this translation, the crux of this subject is the setup for the rest of the conversation. Ravana, this first interlocutor, this 10-headed personage, and you can see in the 10 heads this idea capturing the various kinds of people, right? The various minds that one would encounter, and addressing these minds and saying, okay, you human beings with our setup of 8 consciousnesses, again, it's important to realize this is only 8. They're not discussing with the benefit of the 9th. The 8th, to remind you, is the karmic stream of which our suchness is manifested. I am the result of a vast collection of energies in various states of formation, states of work and action, combining, instantiating, billions of them to create a cell, which that cell has the potential of manifesting into myriad cells in my body. In every single moment, how long is a moment? We've talked about this. A moment, we can go to the Planck constants here and witness a moment with 0.000 something like 37 zeros, and then numbers 1, 2, whatever. I don't remember. I can't memorize everything. Point is, a moment is something so imperceptibly small that you and I can't. It's like the time it takes an electron to move from one state to another. It's infinitesimally small. So consider that. The time it takes for you to utter a word is incalculable, hundreds of thousands of moments. Billions of moments happen in that time span. So really, I mean, if you could perceive at that level of discrimination, wouldn't everything just go, everything is, what's that Kansas song, Dust in the Wind? I mean, dust is pretty immense when you consider moments as that's tiny, small, right? And certainly at that level, you can understand how this collection of energies I'm like a cloud. I'm constantly instantiating and changing, right? But we don't have to see at that level to understand what we're talking about here. We want to understand at that level simply to indicate to our minds, ourselves, how superficial we witness and experience life, that there is so much more depth to every moment we experience. And doesn't that raise the threshold of our excitement, our amazement, our awe? Wow. We don't have to see every one of those discriminated moments to understand the superficial realization of what it is to be a being, and truly being. There is no be. Well, there's a be, but it's a tiny little fraction moment, right? Birth, death. Birth, death. Being, right? To understand every experience we have from that mind, That is the goal. And believe me, if you're trying, I mean, think for yourself. If you're actually perceiving that process, how can there be time or even valuation for making things permanent? That's mine. What a joke. Okay. Whatever. It's yours now. It's yours now. Is it yours now? Is it yours now? Whose is it? Who's the one claiming ownership? What are you? We're all just suchness. We're just evidence of a process. That's not annihilation, by the way. It may seem like it at first. Why? Because our ego's so enamored of holding on to this self. Oh my gosh, don't take this away from me. But we're not. What Shakyamuni is saying is that you are so much more than you think you are. You are the very process of the entire universe. How amazing is that? You don't need to go to some other place. You don't need omniscient gods and deities. You are the very process that is life, the universe, everything in it. Yes, you're a certain qualified group, what I call the freight train of karma, that is you and that is me. But we have infinitely more in common than we have different. Our differences are largely constructed opinions, cravings, that if we lost those distinguishments, those discernments, we would see how much the same not only we all are, but everything is. Now we're getting close to the idea of oneness. Because there truly is very little that separates us. Right? If we're all this big wave of time-space energy just manifesting several different sparks of light. Yeah? Wow. Now I understand liberation, emancipation, right? Okay. So how do we get to that? So this first chapter has been, forget your intellectual understanding of what emancipation is, because you're still thinking, I am emancipated. Nah. But now we're going to be where the I is all I and no I at the same time. We're just a collection of energy moving through time-space. And we all have this delicious opportunity to perceive life, the process that we are, you are, it is, everything is, moment to moment. That's going to require a great falling away of the attachments. It's going to be quite a mindful revolution. And it's called different things, revulsion or whatever. Emancipation is the best word I can think of, because there's no loss there. There's only gain, really. And isn't that what we all want? All right. That's it for today. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your practice. I'm so proud of you guys for continuously practicing through thick and thin. Sometimes it gets really bogged down. Don't keep your resolve up. Keep your confidence up. Even if your day is shit and you're dealing with all kinds of negativity, your Butsudan, your mandala, safe zone. Go chant. Cry and chant. Shout and chant. Demand from this flow of energy that it beholds your Buddha-ness, that it instantiates in this very moment and the next and the next. Damn it, Buddhahood now. Whatever ounce of determination you have, throw it right at your mirror of your Gohonzon, your open door to Buddhahood. Don't think of anything else. Those are discriminations. Right? Dump the discriminations. Invoke Buddhahood now. With that kind of determination, you will get results. I promise you'll get results. Take care of yourself. Be kind to yourself. Don't beat yourself up. I know, we have tendencies to do that. Anyway, let me go stitch this video together, and we'll see if maybe I can't make use of this wonderful computer, or we'll just go back to the last one, which I think was doing pretty well. Occasionally had little mishaps with it, but I think I finally got it honed to it's doing the best job. And with your help, one of these days, I will build, or I will purchase, or will find a desktop powerful computer, powerful enough to handle all this data. And with that sort of a pun, I will see you in the next one.